can't see the man holding your head, you can hear him. His knee is pressed into your shoulder, his fingers hooked over your forehead, pinning your skull to the bench so it can't flinch. Not that you can see him, you can't see anything. The world went to milk months ago. First it was reading, then faces. Now it's just light and gray, like staring at the sun through a thumb's worth of wax. Someone tilts your chin up. They tell you to look at your own nose. Hold it there, don't move no matter what, and then you feel it cold. A single point of metal, thin as a thick hair, resting against the white of your eye, just off to the side of where the color used to be. It presses, the skin of the eye dimples, resists, and gives. There's no word for the sound it makes inside your own head. You do not move. You were told not to move, and then, impossibly, but the gray cracks open and light comes pouring in. Welcome to eye surgery, real eye surgery, performed on a wide-awake human being more than 1,000 years before anesthesia, before germs, before the light bulb. That milk in your vision has a name. It's a cataract, your eye's own lens, a little disc about 9 millimeters across sitting right behind the pupil, slowly turning from clear glass to the color of a boiled egg white. And the man with the needle isn't a monster, he's a professional. He does this for a living. He just pushed a spike into your eyeball on purpose, and it worked. So here's the question. How does stabbing a blind eye with a needle make a person see again? And why, once you know what it actually does to you, did doctors keep doing this for 2,000 years? I'll warn you now. The answer is stranger than they didn't know any better, because they kind of did. And it isn't one thing. It's a stack of things. A real technique, a real target, a real flash of sight, all balanced on top of a lie about what the word cure even means, because they didn't cure the blindness. They just moved it somewhere you couldn't see. Now, you probably picture this as butchery. Some filthy medieval hack in a blood-caked apron, swinging blind at a screaming patient, hoping something good happens. Ignorance with a knife. It was the opposite. The man pinning your head is a specialist. In a lot of places, he's licensed. He belongs to a trade. He trained under someone who trained under someone, and the technique in his hands has been passed down, refined, written into medical textbooks for over 2,000 years. He is not guessing. He has a specific anatomical target, a specific angle of entry, and he can hit it in under a minute. That's what nobody expects. This wasn't a wild swing in the dark. This was a craft, and the craft is exactly what should scare you. Because let's be honest about the room you're sitting in. There is no anesthesia, none. That flash of pain when the needle went through the white of your eye, you felt all of it wide awake because the strongest thing they've got is maybe a cup of wine or a smear of opium paste, and it does almost nothing. You are conscious for every second of a needle moving around inside your eyeball, and you cannot move. That's not a suggestion. If you flinch, if you jerk your head, if your body does the one thing every nerve is screaming at it to do, the point tears across the inside of your eye and it's over. So you sit there, you stare at your own nose, and a stranger steers a blade through your eye by feel, tracking the tip through the very cloud he's trying to fix. There is no germ theory either. Nobody in that room knows bacteria exist. The needle was wiped on a cloth, maybe. His hands were not washed the way you're imagining. The eye he just opened is a warm, wet, sealed chamber, and he has handed the outside world a door straight into it. And here's the part that makes people go through with it anyway. The alternative. The cataract does not stop. It is the #1 cause of blindness in human history, and left alone, it finishes the job. The gray gets thicker, the light gets thinner. You go from shapes to glow to nothing. A slow fade to total dark that can take years, and there is no other exit. No pill, no glasses, no waiting it out. So that's the deal on the table. Stay and go dark for certain, or let the professional put the needle in today and gamble the eye you have left. Most people took the gamble. So let's start with what's actually broken, because to understand why the needle works, you have to understand what it's aiming at. Behind your pupil, behind that black circle in the middle of your eye, sits a part called the crystalline lens. Fancy name, simple job. It's a clear, flexible little disc about the size of a lentil, and its whole purpose is to be see-through. Light comes through your pupil, passes through this lens, and the lens bends it to a sharp point on the back wall of your eye. That's it. It's a window that also focuses. Now, that lens is alive, sort of. Over the decades, it keeps making new fibers, packing them in tighter and tighter, layer on layer, like the rings of a tree, and protein packed that tight for that long eventually starts to clump, to fog, to yellow. That's a cataract. Your clear window, frosting over from the inside, not a film on the surface you could wipe away. The cloud is baked into the glass itself. You've watched this happen, even if you never had a name for it. Think of an older relative going quiet at dinner. First, they need more light to read. Then they stop reading at night. Then they're holding the newspaper at arm's length in full sun and still squinting. Then they stop recognizing faces across the room, then across the table, and one day they tell you the world looks like it's underwater or behind a dirty shower door. That's the lens going from glass to frosted glass to the color of a boiled egg white. And here's the thing you have to hold on to because everything downstream hangs on it. The eye behind that cloud is fine. The nerve is fine. The back wall that catches the picture is fine. All of it is sitting there in the dark, fully wired, fully ready, waiting. The problem was never that the eye forgot how to see. The problem was that the light couldn't get in. Move the cloud and the light comes back. Hold that thought. That's the whole trick, and the whole lie. So here's the trick, and it's uglier than you're imagining. Your instinct, my instinct, anybody's instinct, is that if the lens is cloudy, you take the cloudy lens out, pull the bad part, done. That's how we do it now. That is not what the needle does. The technique has a name. It's called couching. And couching doesn't remove anything. Couching pushes. Here's the plain version. The lens sits in its little slot right behind the pupil, held in place by a ring of fibers so thin they're almost thread. The surgeon slides that needle in through the white of your eye, not the colored part, the tough white wall off to the side, and drives the tip in behind the lens. Then he does the thing that makes your skin crawl. He levers it. He uses the needle like a tiny crowbar, snaps the lens off its mounting, and shoves it down and back, out of the pupil, down into the jelly that fills the back 2/3 of your eyeball. That jelly has a name too, the vitreous. Picture a whole chamber of clear egg white, and the cloudy lens just sinks into it, drops out of the light's path like a coin going down through a jar of honey, and in that instant, this is real, this actually happens, the pupil is clear. For the first time in years, nothing is blocking the hole. Light floods straight through to the back of the eye. That's the gray cracking open. That's the light pouring in. That's the miracle the whole village hears about by sundown. But go back and listen to what he actually did. He didn't fix the lens. He didn't take out the lens. He didn't clean anything. He grabbed the broken part and crammed it down into the basement of your eye where you can't see it anymore. The cloud is still in your head. It's in there right now, sitting in the jelly, doing nothing good. They didn't cure the blindness. They just moved it somewhere you couldn't see. Now, about that miracle, let's talk about what the patient actually sees when the light comes flooding back, because seeing again is doing a lot of quiet work in that sentence. Remember, the lens had two jobs: be clear and focus. Bend the light to a sharp point on the back wall. You just drop the lens into the basement. So the eye is clear now, sure, but it has no focusing part left in it at all. There's a word for that. An eye with no lens is called aphakia, plain version. The window is wide open, but there's no more magnifying glass behind it. Light gets in. Nothing sharpens it. How bad is that? Put a number on it. A healthy eye that loses its lens is thrown off by somewhere around 10 to 14 diopters. Diopters are just the units on an eye chart, the strength of a lens, and to give you a feel for it, someone you'd call legally blind without their glasses might be a 5 or a 6. This is double that. You are now more out of focus than almost anyone you have ever met. So here's what that flash of light really is. You're lying on the bench, the gray cracks open, and you can suddenly tell there's a window across the room because it's a rectangle of brightness. You can see a hand move in front of your face, a pink smear passing through the light. You can tell day from night, cloud from sun, a doorway from a wall. Color comes back, shape sort of, motion sort of, but you cannot read a word, you cannot make out a face. Everything past the end of your arm is a soft, glowing blur, like the whole world got dropped in a warm bath, and to the person who spent the last 3 years in total darkness, that is heaven, that is the best day of their life. That is worth every second of the needle. They didn't give you your sight back, they gave you your light back, and they let you call it the same thing, because after the dark, you couldn't tell the difference. Here's what nobody told the patient. You've got a fresh puncture in the wall of your eye. You've got a broken lens rolling around loose in the jelly at the back, and you just handed the whole setup a few days to decide what it wants to do next. This is where the story stops being a miracle. The first danger has a name: retinal detachment. The retina is that back wall we keep coming back to, the sheet of tissue that actually catches the picture and it's only lightly stuck down. Think wet wallpaper pressed against a shower wall. Now put a needle poking around inside and a heavy lens crashing down through the jelly that sheet is anchored to. Tug the jelly, tear the sheet, and it peels. And when the retina peels off the wall, the light lands on nothing. The eye goes dark permanently, and there is no shoving that back into place with a needle. It's gone. The second danger is worse, and it has a name too. Endophthalmitis, that's the fancy word for the inside of your eyeball filling up with infection. Remember, no germ theory, no clean needle, no washed hands. So bacteria walk straight through that fresh hole into the warmest, wettest, most defenseless chamber in your body. A few days after your best day, the eye starts to ache, then throb, then swell, then fill with pus. The light you just got back gutters out like a candle, and if it's bad enough, the infection doesn't stop at the eye, it goes for the rest of you. So put a real number on the miracle. In the best hands, in the best conditions, couching worked. Actually gave lasting light, maybe a third to a half of the time. Flip that around. The other half, or more, ended in an eye that was worse than the cataract ever was. Not cloudy, not dim, dead, blind for good, or bleeding out into the socket. The cataract was a slow fade you could live with for years. The needle could take the whole eye in a week. They didn't cure the blindness. Half the time, they just moved it somewhere darker, into an eye that would never see anything again. So here's the real question, the one that should be gnawing at you by now. If this thing blinded people half the time, if it could rot an eye right out of a person's skull, how did it survive? Not for a decade? Not for a century? How did couching outlive entire religions? Because it did. And let me walk you through the lineage, because it's staggering. The oldest detailed description we have comes from India, from a surgeon named Sushruta, written down in a text called the Sushruta Samhita around 2,600 years ago. From there, the technique travels. It turns up in Greek medicine. It gets absorbed into the Islamic Golden Age, where around 1,000 years ago, a physician named Al-Mausili actually improves it, designs a hollow needle so he can suck the cataract out instead of just shoving it aside. It's in European textbooks. It is still being performed on living people into the 20th century. That is not a mistake that got caught and corrected. That is one of the longest-running operations in human history, and that's the real reveal. The last factor isn't anatomy at all. It's a trick of accounting. Think about who you actually meet. The man who got couched and walked out, seeing the sun. He's in the market the next week, telling everyone, a walking advertisement, living proof. And the man whose eye went dark or filled with pus or killed him, he's not in the market, he's home, or he's in the ground. He can't testify ever. So the wins are loud and public, and the losses are silent and hidden. And if you're a surgeon standing in that village, all you see, all anyone sees, is a growing pile of grateful people who can suddenly see. The successes recruit, the failures disappear. That's the genius and the horror of it. A procedure that works 1 time in 3 is the perfect disguise for one that blinds you, because 1 in 3 is plenty of miracles to bury the bodies under. The skill was real, and the skill is exactly what kept the needle in the eye for 2,000 years. They didn't cure the blindness. They just made sure you never met the people it destroyed. So watch them stack up. Watch what happens when you put all 5 in the same room. A real target and a cloud you can point to, a real technique, fast, trained, 2,000 years sharp, a real result, that flood of light that turns a blind man into a believer, and then underneath the 2 things nobody sees, the failures that go silent and the pedigree that makes the whole thing untouchable. Now here's the flip. Any one of those factors alone and couching dies. If it never worked, nobody repeats it. If it always killed, the pattern's obvious. If it had no lineage, no authority stands behind it. But together they cross a line. They stop being a treatment and become a machine that manufactures exactly enough miracles to pay for its own graveyard. And here's the part that should keep you up. The better the surgeon, the more it worked. And the more it worked, the more people lined up to lose an eye to it. The skill didn't protect the patient. The skill protected the needle. That's the trap. Competence wasn't the cure. Competence was the reason it never stopped. And if you think this is a story about the past, I need to tell you one last thing. Couching isn't gone. Right now, today, in parts of rural Africa and South Asia, there are people pushing needles into cataracts the same way Sushruta described 26 centuries ago. Sometimes a few hours' drive from a hospital where a real surgeon could lift that same cataract out in 15 minutes and hand you back the whole world sharp. So why choose the needle? Because the hospital costs money you don't have and sits at the end of a road you can't travel, and the man with the needle is here, in your village today. And when you are going blind, a 1 in 3 chance you can reach will always beat a certain cure you can't. The needle was never really about medicine. It was about the arithmetic of the desperate. And some nights, when the dark is coming for you, moving your blindness somewhere you can't see it is the only mercy anyone's offering.